Welcome to Chigbu Outbox, the podcast where land meets intellect. From land governance and spatial justice to academic innovation and policy reform, we unpack the complex issues shaping our world. Join us as we challenge conventional thinking, amplify expert voices, and reimagine the role of knowledge in shaping land futures. This is not just a podcast. This is Chigbu Outbox.
Hi everyone, Ichibu with you once again. I hope you're all doing great. Thanks very much for everyone that subscribed to my channel. I hope you are able to ask your family members, friends, and colleagues and people in your network to subscribe. It's Eugene Chibu, Ichibu's Outbox. Thank you. On this particular occasion, I would like to talk more about something that bothers an average academic, that is publication. And I would like to speak just briefly on the aspects of peer review. What happens in the peer review process? And, everybody wants to know. Oh, by the way, I think I perhaps should speak about this to bring in a little bit of my experience. I happen to be the associate editor of the journal Sustainable Resource Management by Frontiers. I also happen to be a section editor of a Routledge journal. And most importantly, within the land sector, I happen to be the co-editor-in-chief of the journal Land Use Policy. I'm also in the, one of the editors in the General Land Administration in East Africa. There are many of them, but at the top of all of this is the Journal Land Use Policy by Elsevier. That's a journal many people want to publish in, including myself, but obviously as co-editor-in-chief, I'm not particularly pressed to publish there, but I still do have some papers there. Before that, I've published maybe about 4 papers in this journal. I was associate editor of this journal before becoming co-editor-in-chief for 3 years. So with that, I think I have a little bit of an understanding of how the peer review process goes. And I would use that as, I will bring that experience out there to answer questions like, what happens in the peer review process? Why are there complaints? If I want to submit to this journal, how should I write in order to ensure that the peer review process does not work against me? It's 3 questions. I'll talk simply in general. As an author, I would normally want to write a highly comprehensive and detailed work because it gives room for a peer reviewer to always find in the document something they are looking for. And when they do not, like the volume, most likely they would not reject the paper. They most likely would say, cut down there, cut down there, cut down there. That is different if you write a highly, a very lean manuscript where the reviewer cannot find what is supposed to be in the document and now has to tell you, add. It leaves room for certain perceptions. For instance, it leaves room for a reviewer to assume that you do not know. It leaves room for a reviewer to task him, her, or themselves to almost do more study in order to improve the document. And sometimes the task of doing this, it becomes too burdensome that it can weigh a reviewer down. Another approach would be that when you write a manuscript, you try to ensure that the traditional structure of the manuscript are obvious. But at the same time, if you're the type like me who sometimes do not want to follow the traditional structure, you must leave evidence that you understand the structure but chose to deviate, and then provide justifications on deviation. For instance, there's been instances where reviewers simply reject a paper or a manuscript because there's no methodology, because there was no discussion, because the abstract failed to deliver as a standalone narrative. And what do I mean by that? When you write an abstract in itself is a standalone document that is part of the manuscript. And so when you present one, you have to ensure that the basic questions that someone would like to have answered within an abstract, which is, what is the orientation of the subject? What do we know about the subject? Still part of orientation. What is the objective of the paper or the manuscript? What's the method or methodology of that manuscript? Always remember method and methodology. Methodology is more a comparison. It reflects that it's about various methods. Method is usually one thing or one approach. So you speak about the methodology of the manuscript, used in the manuscript. Then the results, the findings, the outcomes, or the outputs. And then navigate around showing what and how those results led to a conclusion. Now, it doesn't always have to follow this order, but it has to be logical. For instance, some people might start as part of the orientation with the relevance, and some people might end with the relevance. Some people might start as part of the narrative or the conclusion, and some people end with conclusion. But what you cannot do is not present the methodology or the methods, not present the results. These are critical. And that alone, when it is properly presented, can enable a reviewer to have hope that there is something great about the document or the manuscript. Then when you go into the document itself or the manuscript, you follow the same approach. And for journals like, let's say, rural studies, such journals, that their discussion would be around rural issues. It has to be around rural studies. Journals like land use policy, whatever you've done, you want to present a discussion on the land use aspect or the land use policy aspect of that result. Whatever the journal is, the scope of that journal allows you, its focal area is what allows you to know how you frame your discussion. For instance, a lot of people write about land use, land cover change. They run through various satellites, images, remote sensing methods, provide evidence of land use, land cover changes over a period of time. And because of the rigor involved in the methodology, they submit the manuscript believing that it will be accepted. No. somebody still will ask the question, what is the land use policy implication of all of this? Somebody will ask the question, what is the rural development or rural implication of all of this? If it's an urban journal, someone will ask the question, what's the urban development or planning implication of all of this? If it is a gender journal, someone will ask, what is the gender perspective being presented because of these results? Reviewers are human beings, like myself, like some of you watching, and some of you watching will be future reviewers. So they have what is expected to be in the manuscript. And when you have this in the manuscript, you've ticked the main box. The next issue will be around the quality. So I would encourage everyone to do their best to do reviews. If you've gotten to that level, it will be appreciated that you engage in reviews, because then that allows you to know how to write and what reviewers expect. But then there's a problem. There are reviewers out there who expect authors or potential authors to write papers the way they want it. So this is one of the emerging issues in the peer review process. Peer reviewers that believe papers have to be written in a certain way, and that only that way that they understand it. Now, I don't plan to be one of them. I'm not one of them. I look for the specific structure, generic structure that should be there, and try to see how authors have been able to navigate, manipulate, adapt, and present it. But yes, there are some of you who, whenever you see a document, whenever you see a manuscript, if it's not the way you want it, you don't accept it, or you simply reject it. I just want to say one thing about this. It's important we understand that a manuscript can have various forms, just like human beings, and can be written in various ways. And so, as a reviewer, it's important that you always remember the document is not your own. It is the author's document. It is the author's manuscript. They are writing it for the whole world. They're not writing it for you only. Your job as a reviewer is to look at the knowledge base and ensure that it is correct. Look at the structure. If it interferes with that knowledge base, you ensure that it's corrected. There is always an editor who is there to ensure that the document fits into the scope, structure, and expectation of the readership of their journals. So please, reviewers, let's get away from this idea that when we receive a paper, we must turn it to become our own paper, rather than the paper submitted by someone else. But if you get a reviewer who insists, what do you do as an author? You're going to have to make a choice. Do you want to continue moving on along with the reviewer, or do you want to report to the editor of the journal to call the editor's attention to your experience with the reviewer? Or you want to withdraw, or keep contesting the situation? Withdrawal is possible. Even in the journal where I happen to be the co-editor-in-chief, the Land Use Policy Journal, I have 2 to 3 withdrawn papers. I've been rejected half of the time, as much as if I've been accepted, it's probably about 4-5 times. If I've been rejected, it's about 6 times. Because that's professionalism. The times that I have to withdraw is either the documents take too long, or I wasn't getting responses. That has improved, and I say that for journals like Elsevier journals that are highly sought after, Routledge journals, Sage, Wiley, these journals. I don't even want to go to Nature. Sometimes it can be so burdensome waiting for, comments. The same way that sometimes the comments are so comprehensive that the authors themselves find it difficult to resubmit. But one thing these journals do for you, in my experience, is they give you reviews. Oh, and yes, there are those that never agree with reviews, except the review is saying accept. If it's not saying accept, it's a problem. The reviewers are being too critical. Mind it. You submitters, it doesn't always have to be that way. But back to the crux of the matter. If the reviewer has chosen to turn your paper around from what it originally was, you have a choice to contest it. And you have response to reviewers where you can make this argument. And ensure that you're able to engage. It's a learning process. You're a scholar. Both the reviewer is a scholar, the editor is a scholar, and the author scholar. So there is always room for you to engage with the reviewer and make your arguments on why things should remain the way they are rather than changing them. But to do that, you have to provide justifications. Scientifically grounded justifications. This is also a problem when it comes to submitters, where authors submit and they are not able to respond to reviewers appropriately. Biases and timelines in peer review. Let's start from the bottom, the timeline. Most of the timelines you get are default timelines as set by the journal. And reviewers do make a mistake sometimes. In fact, most times. When reviewers get a review request, those that accept it always assume because the journal has given them 90 days or 30 days, they always assume they have to wait until the end of that deadline in order to submit. But actually is a time frame. A document sent to you for review and coming with a time frame of 90 days, you could do it right away if you have time. Do not forget, waiting for 90 days means that the author is sitting somewhere waiting. And this is one of the things that has become quite disappointing when it comes to peer review process. Then there's the issue of bias. Before bias, there's the issue of rejection of invitations. We live in a highly multidisciplinary world, and many editors of multidisciplinary journals, especially in the social sciences, they have a knowledge base capable enough and adequate enough to deal with several topics at the same time. But there's this ignorance that I've observed on the part of reviewers. You have a reviewer who's a planner, for instance. And then this reviewer gets a document or manuscript that is focused on participation and says, it's not my area. And I'm wondering, what then is your area? You have a reviewer who is from land administration and then gets a document on land tenure and says it's not my area. And you ask, what is your area? They say it's land finance. And I'm like, do you actually talk about land finance without land tenure? What are you financing? So there are this issue of reviewers not being able to situate themselves around a discipline, around a theme that one could say is broad. So the person on land finance keeps waiting until the day a document comes on land finance. And what happens? Nothing gets reviewed. Then we talk about biases. Where do the biases lie? Is it with the editor? Is it with the journal? Is it with the reviewer? Biases will always be there. For a reviewer, your ability to understand where you could have bias is what allows the editor to make the right decision or the most appropriate decision. For instance, I've come across very good reviewers who start a review. For instance, let's say there's a review on, there's a manuscript to be reviewed on land value capture, for instance, in urban planning or development. And this is sent to an economist. And this economist, a good reviewer, would start by saying, this topic, I have reviewed this topic not on the basis that it stands at the center of my work, but it's on the periphery. I understand the financial aspect, the public finance aspect, the public administration aspect. However, the urban planning and development aspect is a weakness. So I have reviewed this manuscript from the perspective of economics. And this person goes over to review the document. Statements like that, and that's what I expect, and that's what I try to do, allows an editor to know what bias that could apply to that document. It also allows the reviewer, a good one, by coming from that way, to show that this is what I know and this is what I do not know. And in those areas I do not know, there's a possibility for bias. Or the place that I know, there's a possibility for bias. And it would allow an editor to clearly make the right decision. So, to conclude, the peer review process is complicated. It's also not complicated. What happens is you put in your document, it comes to the journal. Someone who is an administrative editor goes through that to pass it on to the main editor. And this person can go through it and there is something wrong with the submission and forwards it back to you. It's not a rejection. It just means you didn't do it right. Now, this administrative editor can move it on to the chief editor or the main editor, who goes through it first to determine whether that particular paper or manuscript is good for the journal. It is the interest of the editor to only accept what projects the vision, the objective of the journal, whether his, her, they. And when they review your journal, that is the editor, the main editor gets it, reviews it. It is called desk review. That is, a desk review allows him or her to know whether he should actually accept it for the journal to now send it out for review. Sometimes they reject it. They have reasons why they could reject it, because it is out of scope. That means what you have published is not what they would like to, what you have submitted is not what they would like to publish. because maybe it doesn't fall in the center of what the journal wants to publish in terms of the theme, they will reject it as out of scope. It is also called desk rejection. It is not a bad thing. It just means is desk rejected, you should look for the appropriate journal to send it to. It's not something to scratch your body over. Now, if the main editor sees that the document or the manuscript is good for his or her journal, they will now start searching for a reviewer. Sometimes it might take, look, I have in our system 7 months manuscripts that have not found a reviewer. 1 year manuscript that has not found a reviewer. Some, we get the reviewer, but then the reviewer never actually shows up to do the assignment, and you have to keep looking for another reviewer. And to look for a reviewer, the editor sends it out on invitation. I'm sorry. This reviewer gets it and has to, potential reviewer gets it and has to accept it. Some of them get the manuscript, but they do not accept it. They reject it. That means they don't want to review it. The editor has to keep searching for reviewers until the editor is able to get a reviewer. This is the most difficult part of it, in my experience. Then there's another difficult part. Let's say you finally get a reviewer. Remember, you're supposed to get double-blinded review, at least in the most of the journals that I work for. So you need 2 of those. Sometimes you get one, you don't get the other. These days, what I do in the journals that I work for is, because there are topics I understand, I begin to serve also as a reviewer, or begin to do editorial reviews. But you can't do that for a lot of manuscripts. And so, by the time you're able to get the 2 reviewers and their comments come in, it goes back to the editor now to make a decision to send it out to the author. So when the editor makes a decision, which is usually reject and resubmit, major revision, accepted with major revision, accepted with minor revision, accepted. These days we have what is called reject post-review, reject pre-review. These things are put in. Reject post-review would mean no, post-transfer. I repeat that again. Reject post-transfer. Reject pre-transfer. What that means is the editor can be kind enough that after your paper has been rejected by reviewers, instead of just sending it to you to say reject, we'll look for another journal that would potentially accept to review it and can now send you a letter to say it's rejected, but post-reject transfer, or reject post-review, transfer. What that means is that it's been reviewed, but the editor is rejecting it and is giving you option to send it to another journal already identified. And sometimes just forwards it back and it's complete rejection. The same happens that when the editor receives the manuscript, even before it goes to review, the editor can say, oh, this is another journal that might be interested in this because it's not good for my journal. Okay, I will reject it, but give you the option to send it to those journals. So these are the things we find in the peer review process. And I hope with a little time, I've been able to speak on some of these things. I don't need to talk about the accept part. If the editor accepts it, these things go back and forth. If they come back, the author has to revise. After revision, it goes through the same process again. The editor sends it back to the same reviewers. Sometimes those reviewers that reviewed it initially say they don't want to review it anymore. This happens when some of us that write 85-page manuscripts. That's one book, you forgot? They just get their thesis and pile everything up, boom. An editor accepts it, and by the time the editor downloads it, it sees like, they can't pick their kids from school anymore because they have to read this. It becomes another work. Remember, reviewers are usually not paid. They are not paid. It's voluntary work. I have about 100. What, no? Did I say 100? No. 1,154 verified reviews. I believe I have reviewed more than 2,000 documents in my academic career. And 1,154 of them are verified by OSIT with reviews. If you go to Web of Science, I have reviewed, verified by Web of Science, 830 something on Web of Science. Those are reviews that one has done, and Web of Science was able to identify that they did it and can even tell you the volume of their review, the average volume of their review in terms of whether it is 300 words, 400 words, 1,000 words. We cannot project academic knowledge, especially through publication, without engaging in peer reviews. So don't bother too much about reviewers. Just try to learn them as you get into relationship with people in the classroom, in the office. Learn the reviewer. It's a relationship. Now I'm speaking to you as an author. Understanding the reviewer is a relationship you should understand, but the best way to do that is for you to begin to review. Because when you begin to review and you write at the same time, you are able to balance this and know how to act as an author and how to act as a reviewer, what to expect, and how best as a reviewer to guide an author. Thanks very much. I believe from now, I can't say everything about the peer review process, but these are the few I'm able to mention to you at this point, and I hope that this has been useful to you. So please, thanks very much, and I hope that you once again subscribe to my channel. If you have not subscribed, please do. If you have subscribed, please look for someone else who can subscribe. I appreciate you. Go down to the comment section and leave comments if you like what you've heard. Even if you don't like what you've heard, please engage. Thank you. Bye.